Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're back here with the Spartan 2. We're gonna go ahead and replace the radiator. Now, it's actually been about a week and a half since I've last seen the vehicle. And the reason for that is because no one really had this radiator in stock. We called everywhere: O'Reilly, Advanced Auto Parts, AutoZone, XL Parts, every parts place we could find locally, and nobody could get us this radiator. Luckily, we were able to find it online. I think the customer went ahead and got it off of eBay. So it took about a week for it to come in. He's on the way here to bring it to me. So I showed up a little bit early. I figured I'd get started. So let me take you guys over to the vehicle and show you what we're working with. Well, before I get started, let me show you guys real quick what they've got parked next to our Spartan, which is a beautiful car. It really is. But take a look at this one right here. Got this Mercedes. I'm not sure what year it is, but it's got this really, really cool wide body kit. Man, check out that interior. That is one beautiful car. I'm not a really big Mercedes guy, but I'll tell you what, this Mercedes looks pretty nice. Take a look at that profile there. Man, that wide body kit makes it look so much nicer. I mean, I think that's what it is. I'm not really sure. I usually don't see them like this. Boy, is that nice. Anyways, moving back to our Spartan, let me take you guys underneath the hood, show you guys where the radiator is located. Now, if you look under here, it's actually buried underneath all of this stuff, and it's actually kind of laying at an angle. I mean, it's actually a pretty steep angle that it's at. If you take a look through the grill, I don't know if I can show you guys. Maybe if you can see it through the grill. Nope. You move over here. Okay, you guys see the radiator hose right there? It's attached down here. I'll try to get you guys, there we go. You guys can see the top of the radiator there. It's got a couple bolts at the top there on each end. Now, it doesn't look difficult to unbolt. I just don't know how we're gonna get it out of here, to be honest with you. Either we're gonna have to pull it from the top, or maybe pull it from the bottom. I mean, if we gotta pull it from the top, then maybe this hood has to come off. I don't know if it's possible to pull it from the top because this is a fiberglass body, like it's all one piece. You guys see what I'm talking about? And then this brace that goes across the top, like you would think it looked like we could just remove this brace, taking these 4 bolts off, but that's actually not the case, because if you look at this brace, it's actually one piece all the way through onto the other side. So I'm not really sure how we're supposed to take this radiator out. I guess first things first, let me go ahead and remove this air box, get some of this stuff out of the way so we can get a better visual of it. Okay, so I went ahead and I got the air box off. Now take a look down in here. As you guys can see, we still can't see the radiator because there's a plastic kind of windage tray or a cover that's here. So that's gonna have to come off. But I don't think I can get that off until I get the fan and the fan shroud out. So let me go ahead and pull this off. Okay, so I've got the fan clutch and the fan unbolted. Just the 4 bolts. I mean, I've already replaced this fan clutch, so I already knew it was simple enough to take it out. There was 2 clips on the bottom for this fan shroud, and there's 1 bolt here at the top. Now I'm just gonna lift all this up together. Now, this video isn't gonna be like a step-by-step video. You know, I don't think there are really too many people out there trying to work on their Spartans. You know, so honestly, I'm gonna skip all of the details. I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of cut to the point. This is for entertainment purposes only. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this fan and the shroud. Pull this up here. Let me sneak the fan out first. Like that. We'll set you aside. Right there. Now let's see if we can pull this fan shroud out. Come on, buddy. There we go. Gotcha. All right, so now we have those 2 pieces out. We can take a closer look. Now we can see the radiator. We've got 2 transmission cooler lines connected to it. There's a lower radiator hose there. Again, the upper radiator hose over there. Now we got to go ahead and try to remove this plastic shroud, but looking at the shroud, it actually looks like it goes all the way around this thing. What the hell?
A few moments later.
Okay guys, so I was able to unbolt the shroud from the radiator, but no matter how hard I fought this thing, I just could not get it out of there. I mean, there's no room for this plastic shroud to come out. Now, I was looking at this thing a little closer, and I know on a Nissan 300ZX, this radiator is designed to come off with the removal of the bumper. So there is no way to pull the radiator out through the top. You have to remove the front bumper on the Nissan 300ZX and slide the radiator out of the front. Now, the problem is that we can't do that with this vehicle because even though this is a Nissan 300ZX chassis, this is a completely different body, a fiberglass body at that. And this fiberglass body is all one piece all the way around. So if you pay attention to the body, you'll see that it's made out of fiberglass. And if you look over here on the front where the grill is, you'll see that this is all one piece with the body. So it's not actually possible to remove the radiator from the front without pulling the body off of the frame. So I think we have no choice really but to remove it from the bottom. Now the problem is that here at the bottom, we have these little sockets where the radiator goes into. I don't know, I think we may be able to get around it, but I'm not really sure. Let me show you guys down in here. You take a look at the side of the radiator, you'll see that it's got these little sockets that are welded to the frame, and the radiator slides into it from the top into those sockets. I don't know if you can see the other side or not. Kind of difficult to see, but either way, we're gonna have to try to remove this radiator from the bottom. I don't really have a choice. Now, the only thing I can tell you from the bottom is that we're gonna have to remove the steering shaft. It's a long two-piece steering shaft that runs from the steering wheel to the rack and pinion that's up here in the front. Then we have some power steering lines over there. And then also there's this big AC line that runs across the bottom. So I'm hoping I don't have to remove that AC line because I don't want to discharge the system because it is an R12 system. This has not been adapted over to R134A. So I hope we don't have to, release any of the refrigerant, do anything like that. So anyways, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and try to remove what I can. But honestly, I'm going to have to come back tomorrow because I'm going to have to bring my big jack and my big jack stands so that we can try to raise this thing up as high as possible. We can attempt to try to slide the radiator out of the bottom. Okay, so I managed to get this big plastic shroud out. I really had to flex it in order to get it out. I'm surprised I didn't break it. Now, I did have to break off these two brackets right here. I mean, they were tack welded on, no big deal. We can probably just tack weld those back on. But what I wanted to show you guys was the radiator and how it was attached at the bottom. Now, I've already went ahead and lifted up on the radiator so I can pull it out of those sockets. So if you look right down here, you can see the bracket on the frame, welded to the frame. That's where the radiator pushes into. It slides into the slot down in there. I don't know if I can get it to go back in. I had to force it to get it out. But either way, you can see where it mounts into the bottom here. Now, the problem is that I can't lift up any higher on the radiator. The ears at the top of the radiator, where the bolts are already hitting the body. I'm gonna try to show you guys. So if you see the ears at the top of the radiator, they're already hitting the fiberglass body. So I can't lift up any higher on this radiator. So I actually can't pull it out of the bottom yet because it's not fully out of the bottom mounts. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is I'm going to have to maybe cut a part of these mounts just enough so I can slide this radiator out past the bracket there. I don't know if you guys can see where the bracket is, but I'm gonna have to slice off a piece of that bracket so I can maybe pull the radiator out of the bottom. Now, the other problem that I'm running into is if you guys look at this bar that's running across the bottom, this is actually a really long steering shaft. Now, this is an extension shaft because the front of this car is so long where the steering wheel is and where the rack and pinion is up in the front. They had to put this really long extension arm so they could reach the rack and pinion. Now, we can remove this bar. That's no problem at all. It's really not that difficult to do. But the other issue that I'm running into is that if you take a look at where the radiator was, again, guys, I've already lifted up on this radiator and I pulled it away from the bracket, but when this radiator was all the way down, it was actually rubbing into the shaft. You can see where it was rubbing into the shaft right there. Let me kind of take you guys in right there. So this radiator was actually rubbing into the shaft, or excuse me, the shaft was rubbing into the radiator. And if you take a look underneath, you can see where it wore a groove into the radiator. And the problem with that is that, let me show you guys the radiator that they purchased. Right over here, they brought me the radiator. And initially I looked at the radiator, it looks like the right one. So we have our mounting ears up here at the top. There's one on this side, there's one on this side. We have a 90-degree top radiator hose. And then here at the bottom, we have these two pins that come out where it mounts to the bottom. But the problem is that they purchased a 3-core radiator. So if you look at how thick this radiator is, you'll notice that this thing is actually twice as thick as the radiator that's in the vehicle. Now that's a problem because that radiator that's in there is already rubbing up against that shaft from the factory. When they built this thing, they put that thing with really tight tolerance. It was already rubbing into the radiator. There's no way I could fit this 3-core radiator in there without doing some serious damage. So at this point, I don't even think that we can really go any further. We're gonna have to send this thing back, get the correct radiator or a thinner radiator, and then we can go from there.
One eternity later.
Okay, so fast forward. It's actually been about 3 weeks now since I've last seen the car. Let me explain to you what happened. So if you guys recall, the last time we were here, we were trying to get the radiator out of the car. We found out that it was gonna be a lot more difficult than we anticipated. And the second problem we had was that the radiator they ordered, the one they purchased, was an aftermarket radiator, and it was actually a lot thicker than the factory one that was in the car. The only problem is that the steering shaft in the car was actually so close to the radiator, it was already rubbing up against the factory one, so there was no way that the aftermarket one was going to be able to fit. So the owner had his guy try to source a radiator, and it's been about 3 weeks, and we cannot find a radiator for this car. We found a few listings, but they seem to be on back order. And I know with the pandemic and everything going on, stuff coming from overseas is just taking forever. So we're just not able to get a hold of one. And the guys really just want to get this car up and running. So I've got the radiator out. And again, the way I got this radiator out was through the bottom. I had to remove the steering shaft, disconnect some lines and some hoses down there, and then pull the radiator out from underneath the car. So as you can see, I had to jack it up as high as possible. And I put these big 6-ton jack stands underneath, and then I was able to slide it out through the bottom. So what they're planning on doing is actually sending this radiator off to a radiator repair shop. They're gonna see if we can get this radiator rebuilt. Hopefully that'll be good enough to get the car up and running so we don't have any cooling system issues. And then maybe eventually in the future, if they're able to get a hold of a brand new one, then we'll be able to replace it at a later date. So anyways, at this point, I'm about to head out. They're gonna pick up this radiator, send it to a radiator repair shop. They're gonna see what they can do, and as soon as they're finished with it, I'll be back to put it back in the car, and we'll see what happens.
2 weeks later.
All right, guys, so we're back. It is 2 weeks later, and we got the radiator back from the radiator shop. If you guys recall where we last left off, we managed to pull the radiator out of the vehicle, and the owner sent the radiator off to get rebuilt. And he did say at the rebuild shop, they told him that the radiator was pretty clogged, so I'm not sure how they rebuild these radiators. I don't really know what goes on with that, but he says the radiator's ready to go. Sorry about the background noise around here. There's a lot of supercars in this area. But anyway, you can see it's got a fresh coat of paint, and they managed to, I guess, pressure test it, make sure it wasn't leaking, and they cleaned out the radiator. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing back into the vehicle. As you can see, I've got it jacked up and on jack stands, ready for me to get underneath and slide that radiator in. Now, before we get started, I know some of you guys are gonna ask about this Rolls Royce parked here. Looks like they just recently purchased this one. I guess another one added to the collection here. Check out those wheels. They look really nice. Now, I don't know what year it is. I don't know much about these models. All I can say is that it is one beautiful car. Very nice. Anyway, back to what we came here for. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so taking you guys underneath the vehicle, just to show you real quick. This is our radiator. We have it installed now. I have it on the little brackets on the side. Again, this radiator really wasn't designed to be installed from the bottom or removed. I really had to fight to get this on there, but I managed to do it. Now the only thing left to do is we're gonna reattach these lines. These are the power steering lines. I have that steering shaft on the ground. I'm gonna have to put the steering shaft back on. We have some transmission lines. I've got to put the radiator hoses on. I've got to put the 2 bolts at the top of the radiator. And of course I got to put the fan back together, the belt, all that good stuff. So let me go ahead and get back to it. Okay guys, once again, let me apologize for skipping ahead here. I've got everything back together. Got the engine running. As you can see, I'm bleeding the cooling system right now. This is actually a couple days later, or a few days later. Let me explain to you what happened. So the last time we were here, I've got everything done at the bottom that I needed to get together, but the bolt for the steering shaft was actually stripped out. The bolt that goes up to the top is actually right next to the exhaust. So I guess years and years of being next to the exhaust manifold, whenever I went to remove that steering shaft bolt, I guess it just took the threads with it. So anyways, I was kind of stuck at that point. I had to go find a bolt to replace it. And then we had a tropical storm come through. Some of you guys might know Tropical Storm Beta came through, and this side of Houston got really, really bad with the water. Got pretty high up here. And so the thing is that I had a lot of the parts sitting over here in the corner, and the water got up pretty high over here, and so all my parts were everywhere, the bolts and stuff. So I kind of had to go hunting for all that stuff. Anyways, after all that headache, finally got everything back together. The only thing that I really did have a problem with is the plastic shroud. Now, I'm not talking about this fan shroud out here. This is actually 2 pieces. So there's one on the outside, and then there's a big plastic shroud on the inside. Now, to get it out, I actually had to kind of fold it and muscle that thing out of there. But I really didn't want to have to do that, trying to put it back in, because I really didn't want to damage the radiator, you know, after it got rebuilt and everything. So I really had to fight that thing to get it in there, because again, like I said, guys, this really wasn't meant to come out of the bottom. It was meant to come out of the front or at the top, but because this fiberglass shell sits on top of this frame, there really is no way to do that. It had to come out of the bottom. So anyways, I had to fight that big shroud. Finally got it in there. It was a pain in the butt. Got the engine running. The cooling system is bleeding right now. I'm gonna finish this off. I'm gonna close it off, take it for a test drive, and let's see if it overheats. All right guys, so I'm getting ready to go on the test drive. It's already getting dark outside, so I'm gonna have to make this quick. I had to stop and get some power steering fluid because I had forgotten that when I disconnected the power steering lines, I had to refill the fluid. So anyways, we're ready to take a test drive, so let's go ahead and get on the road. All right guys, so I apologize. I really couldn't film the test drive. It's already dark outside. The camera quality is really crummy. So I'm gonna go ahead and park this thing. We'll call it a night.